Hi, I'm Suzanne Bayley, president of the Columbia Wetlands Stewardship Partners, or CWSP as we call it, and I'm going to talk briefly today on the ecological threats and opportunities in the Columbia Wetlands. We were very fortunate several years ago to co-host with KCP a conservation action forum similar to this today, and so we've had some actually time to work on some of these actions that have been identified. One of the biggest issues that came out in our understanding is that the fisheries have been declining greatly in the Columbia River and the Columbia Wetlands and the tributaries. And we all know, of course, that the Chinook salmon have been completely blocked and are no longer here. The sturgeon are gone, but we're also finding that bull trout, burbot, west slope cutthroat trout are also in decline. And so one of the things that we can do to that is to actually restore habitat and to restore some of their spawning areas. So you can see here we're looking to try to monitor the fisheries and restore some of the tributaries. And the Shuswap Indian Band, in partners with other partners in the valley, has been taking the lead on this, and especially in one of their projects funded by Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So in this left-hand slide, you can see each of the watersheds. Most of those watersheds have great impairment on them. And we need to monitor the fisheries, and they're starting that, but we need other partners like people here up in Golden as well. And as you can see here on the right, the Galena Creek is one of the creeks where we've restored several long reaches of Galena Creek, but you can see very obviously that the creek is greatly impaired. The sediment has been drawn out, the creek straightened, and we're losing a lot of the sediment that needs to go into the Columbia River. And another major project or issue that we're all going to have to face is what is going to be the effect of climate change, and what effect will this increased temperature that we have and that are modeled to come upwards to 5 degrees centigrade. What effect will that have on the Columbia Wetlands, on all the waters in the tributaries? Will they all dry out? Will the Columbia Wetlands have enough water to maintain the wetlands, both summer and winter? And that's in great doubt. So one of our projects that we were looking at is to see have we been losing water over the last few decades? And as you can see in this slide here, all these red dots are areas that the wetlands have been drying out in recent decades. And one of the things that we have identified is that many of these wetlands lose much of their water over winter after the flood pulse has passed. But other wetlands tend to keep water and retain that water over winter. And these are the ones that we're actually particularly concerned about because we actually think that they may be drying out, as our previous graph showed. So in April, the flood pulse has not arrived, and yet all the birds arrived and need habitat from their migration from the south. So we have to ensure that, if possible, we can retain water in the overwinter to provide it for migrating birds and other species that need it. Well, one of the ways of doing that, of course, is to build small, tiny little beaver dams or artificial beaver dams in some of these wetlands. But, of course, we have to identify what are the vulnerable wetlands and identify if we, in fact, can do something to help the beaver maintain the water over winter. So we have a big project now and hope for additional funding to identify where these vulnerable beaver dams are, and then work with local people to figure out what we can do to retain water. Another project that we actually had was to actually map all of the wetlands in the Columbia Wetlands, from all the way actually from Canal Flats up to Donald. And just as an example of that, here on the left, we have a map of the bottomland hardwood forest from Parson to Golden. So all of those little yellow lines there are some of the bottomland hardwood, which are particularly important for many species at risk. And some of these are owned by the wildlife management area, but others are private. And we need to work with local people to see if we can protect as much of that as possible. But overall, we have a number of recommendations. And essentially, we need to develop and implement plans to maintain water in the wetlands that are vulnerable to climate change, or we actually won't keep our fantastic wetland that we actually have. We also need to identify and work to protect specific areas of habitat important to species at risk and focal species. For example, why are we losing our elk out of the wetlands? Where are there important habitat for them in the uplands, and what can we do to ensure that the upland and the wetlands actually work together? We have to recognize that we need to protect the watersheds and their habitats to protect the internationally significant Columbia Wetlands. Thank you.